All right, everyone, now it's time for the undeservedly big news of the day, which is the New York Times hiring someone who, she's a bigot, to be on their editorial board. Sarah Jeong, Asian immigrant of Korean heritage, I believe. And they're hiring her as one of their people to be an editor. She was working for The Verge, which is like self-explanatory what kind of politics are involved. Here are my basic thoughts about this. Number one, and this has to be said, people on the right have to stop pretending to be outraged the way the people on the left do. I'm not outraged at her jokes. They don't bother me. They're directed at people like me, white males. Who fucking cares? What is it? It's just a bad joke. It's not really offensive, and it shouldn't result in people being deplatformed. That being said, big number two, the New York Times is fucking stupid for not owning up to the fact that it hired a bigot. By them, they're attempting to shield her, and all of her fans are too. People on the left are like, they've actually deluded themselves into thinking that their form of bigotry isn't bigotry because it's directed at white people. Oh yeah, I can be, you know how you sound? You sound like a segregationist 70 years ago, saying, yeah, I talk badly about black people all day, and I tell jokes about them, and I mistreat them, but it's okay because, they're not the same as us. They're a little bit less deserving of decency, and so it's okay. You sound exactly the same. It's like a fucking minstrel show, dude. It's just directed at whites and males, so you happen to have deluded yourselves into thinking it's not actually racism. Well, it is. It purely is. Racism has nothing to do with power and privilege. By the way, Asians are not an underprivileged group within the United States anyway. They're not. They make more on average than white people do. Did you know that? I bet you did, and that throws a wrench into your sort of worldview. Look, if you have someone, major editor at a major outlet, probably getting a six-figure salary for it. She's now an editor with the New York Times. Don't you think someone from an overprivileged racial group working for a major multinational billion-dollar firm and drawing a six-figure salary so that she can live in an upper-class apartment and not down in the dregs with the little people? Don't you think that's a situation that would rise to the level of privileged in your estimation anyway? Oh, it's because she's female, so, can't actually be racist. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It really doesn't. So the first thing that pisses me off, it has nothing to do with the jokes themselves. And they're not funny, they're just crass. Those don't bother me. The hypocrisy bothers me. It bothers me that people on the left that 10 years ago were fighting for free speech now break down in tears and try to deplatform people for some mildly offensive humor someone made like fucking 10 years ago. And yet they look at what this woman is saying and they have no problem with it and they even seek to exonerate it. The other problem is that the New York Times is doing this for money. In their estimation, the only time that the legacy media goes after someone for more racism or more sexism is if they're a competitor. They're not going to do it to someone within the legacy media itself. To Sarah Jeong, she's working for the New York Times. They don't care if she's racist, but they need to be honest and come out and say they don't care that she's racist. By the way, even if she were like white and male and racist, they wouldn't care about that either, but they definitely would have cut her position. You look at their readership. Who do you think reads the New York Times? Disproportionately, it's going to be people who are left-leaning. Disproportionately, it's going to be people who have indoctrinated themselves willingly into thinking that bigotry is okay, depending on who it's aimed at. They don't care. Their readership's not going to up and leave because their editor's a bigot. She's a bigot against the right kind of people for the New York Times audience. In fact, they love it. They love bigotry. They have no problem with it. It's just directed at the right people. That's why they have a problem with Roseanne going and calling Valerie Jarrett a character from the Planet of the Apes. But they don't have a problem with Sarah Jeong saying, oh yeah, I love mistreating old white men. It's really funny and stuff. They don't have a problem with it. None of them are going to care. The New York Times will take a hit, and its remaining white male user base, which is probably scanned at this point. They didn't give a fuck. It's like, yeah, I'm sure that the average Rachel Maddow viewer would be really upset if Rachel Maddow did the top 10 reasons I find men dumb and unattractive. They wouldn't care. Okay, 1% of her audience leaves, but then the New York Times, they've been doing this. They're going down into the realm of a tabloid. That's what they've been doing. Their rebranding effort is to outwit other legacy media groups and be the last man standing by being the most clickbaity, by being the most attention whoring. That's what the New York Times has been doing. They're seeking to supplant even groups like Salon and the HuffPost by being the most overtly bigoted and far left and Marxist and moronic. They're hoping that by being the most mean to the MAGA people and saying deplorable the most, they will at least have that left-wing younger audience, the new left, the alt-left you could call it, although it's really just an extension of the old far left, more draconian than before. They're hoping that they'll have their loyalty, which means they're like, hey, at least for the next 30, 40 years, we'll be solvent. We'll be robbing the audience of all the other legacy media outlets. Now, keep in mind, this is just like what happens with cable. When MSNBC's ratings rise, it's just cannibalizing them from CNN. So it's not like the pond is growing. No, their pond is shrinking, but they're hoping to be the last fish still alive in it, swimming around, eating the dead bodies and shit of all of the other fish corpses. That's what the New York Times wants. They're being cutthroats. They're being corporate cutthroats doing this. It's just a simple strategy, and it's fully about money. It's not about ideology. They don't give a fuck what her ideology is. They wouldn't care if she were far right, as long as they can make money. They have an editorial member who is an open and an avowed racist and sexist. It helps get them attention. With the kind of audience that they want, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. They're never going to fire her. She could turn around and say, well, yeah, I apologize. I wouldn't fire her for that either. By the way, the New York Times is apologizing for her, and she and the New York Times lied too. We've got two conflicting stories, neither of which are true. The claim was made, well, these were in response to racists. No, they weren't. These were things you were saying in amiable, friendly conversation with your fans. You weren't saying it to these things and joking around as a response to people who were heckling you. Nobody knew who the fuck you were, dude. You were working for The Verge, not the New York Times. Nobody knew who you were. I never heard your name before yesterday. Nor do I care to. I don't care anything about you, and your jokes don't impress me. The hypocrisy is, would she still be on Twitter if you changed one word in each one of these very conspicuous racist posts? Or her sexist posts? If you change just one word, if the word white were changed out for, I don't know, say Jewish or black, do you think she'd be on Twitter right now? No, therein lies the problem. It's hypocrisy. The joke itself is not the problem. The way it's treated differently despite having essentially the same central information, the same central purpose, that's the problem. But nobody cares. Jack doesn't care. Twitter doesn't care. It's about double standards and hypocrisy. What I say is this. I don't care if Jeong makes jokes about white people. I don't care if David Duke gets a Twitter account and starts joking about black people. I don't really care. If I don't like it, I can ignore it, I can refute it, I can dislike it, I can do whatever I want. Block it out entirely. It's called the freedom to consume whatever the fuck you want on a social media site. Nobody's forcing you to read the New York Times. Why would you want to anyway at this point? It's a bunch of slimy swill straight from the New York sewers. That's what the New York Times is. It's become a tabloid. Who fucking cares about the New York Times? People on the right need to stop pretending to be outraged. And it is pretend. In all honesty, a lot of it's pretend. It's whoa, I'm so outraged. No, they're trying to mock leftists by pretending this. It's an attempt to mock the left's reaction whenever something happens on the right. The problem is with that strategy is you're forming a false equivalency between someone making hundreds and hundreds of jokes systemically about white males and somebody who made a totally non-racist single joke maybe years ago and getting deplatformed for it. Two totally different things. You're actually doing the wrong thing. To like Dice and Pasobik and all these, you're reacting the wrong way because you're forming a false equivalency that almost enforces the arguments of the left. That's what you need to deal with some more strategy there. As far as the outrage, well, fuck it. I'm not outraged at her. I'm only outraged at the New York Times for being a bunch of slime bags. That's exactly what they are. Hypocrites. Corporate cutthroat hypocrites. It's what we need to recognize that they are. It's like CNN. They're a corporation. They're a for-profit entity. Fuck the First Amendment with regards to that. Anyone can criticize them. It's not attacking their First Amendment rights. They do it all the time. They attack everybody. The New York Times loves to call people racist and say, well, we need more censorship, we need to deplatform. Well then, I think maybe your page, which incites racial hatred by hiring this person, you're encouraging racism, you've apologized for her, you should be kicked off of Twitter then by your own standards. Live by your own rules. Sort of a Saul Alinsky thing, but it does make sense. People should be under the same general banner of moral standards and ethical standards. It just makes sense. It's how you have a polite society. Either everyone can make weird jokes or nobody should be able to make them. I think everyone should. I don't really care. I don't care if someone makes fun of white males. I say this as a white male. It's like it's called having a sense of humor. Now, it's not very funny what she's saying. They're not good jokes, but I don't care if she says them. I do care, though, if the New York Times that calls everyone else racist says deplatform them. We must go after the advertisers that work with YouTube to censor the alt media. They're doing it for fiscal reasons, by the way. Totally for fiscal and political reasons. They're doing it at the behest of their neoliberal allies. I do care if they then hire a total bigot. Live by your own fucking rules. Don't come out and apologize. Say, yeah, we knew that she made these jokes, but we've discussed it with her. She promises not to do it again. Who cares? She already made those jokes. She obviously has those views. You would never forgive somebody else saying, yeah, I made a bunch of jokes about Jews 3 or 4 years ago, but I'm a reformed person now. I realize that that's no longer acceptable. So the shitty pizza parlor I work for, I've told them, don't worry, I won't make any more jokes about the Hebrew people. It's not going to work. It wouldn't work for anybody else. Why is it working for this goofball? That's about all. Peace out.